So the next installment here in our little discussion around dowsing, again, these are ideas that are very supportive and helpful. Without these ideas, it's easy to get discouraged because the logical mind, again, will, it won't be able to see the logic or the reasoning behind what you're doing, so you'll get discouraged and you'll go on to something else. But if we understand these principles, again, it'll help give us a grounding and an understanding and an appreciation for what amazing gifts and potential we all have. So I'd like to discuss, first of all, the limitations of belief. We talked about the two levels of the mind, about the conscious mind, which is actually a very minuscule part of our overall awareness, and then the superconscious mind. The superconscious mind is really unlimited. It's not limited by conditioning, by beliefs, by culture, but the conditioned mind is, the small mind, if you like. So this aspect of our awareness is like a filter, and no matter what we experience, we always put the filter of perception, which often involves language, which often involves past conditioning, onto our experience. I mean, that's how it is here. We can't just experience something without perceiving it at the same time. And by the very act of perception, we have created limitation in our experience. And so I'd like you just to appreciate that if you have beliefs that come up for you and create, how can I say, blockages or resistances to really tapping into your power, I would say have a second look at those beliefs. Have a second look at those ideas. Most of them you're going to find out are not even your own ideas or beliefs. They're beliefs that have been passed down through culture, through institutions, through education, through religion, through language, and belief systems that simply have been recirculating on this planet for generations now, without anyone ever really seriously looking at them. So again, be open-minded, allow yourself to look at your beliefs, and again, simply by observing your beliefs, often they will change, they will shift, they will open up to perhaps new levels of potential for yourself. I also like to discuss the difference between duality and non-duality, as I think this is a very essential ingredient into our overall success as dowsers and as human beings for that matter. Duality is rooted in the notion of separation, and it actually goes back to the separation of the individual from the one. And this is a metaphysical idea, so it can't pin this down necessarily in time, although some say this is what was responsible for the Big Bang. In other words, an idea within all that is, within the oneness, occurred, what if I could do this myself? And based on this idea, we actually created this entire experience of the universe of separated forms. And so when we're operating in this realm of separation, we are operating necessarily dualistically. When I separate myself from my experience, I'm in a dualistic orientation. And that's okay, I suppose, although it does set up serious limitations in our expansion of awareness and also our appreciation of who we truly are, who our true identity truly is. So non-duality is simply the idea that whatever exists is real, and if something is not true and does not exist, it's not real. In other words, reality is the only reality, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but in a non-dual perspective, there are no opposites to what I'm experiencing, to myself. So non-duality is the idea that life exists in reality without any opposites, without any conflict, without any need for opposition. And this is something that, again, because our minds are so conditioned to duality, it's very hard to get our heads, to wrap our heads around non-duality. Thankfully, however, in the level of the heart intelligence, we can appreciate or accept the possibility of an ultimate reality. And that this heart knowing, for example, a good example of this would be the ability to hold within our hearts the possibility of unconditional love. Now, unconditional love is love without opposite, and in our hearts we know what that's about. If you're a parent or have children, whatever, you know what that's about. There's nothing that they could ever do that would destroy this bond, this unconditional love. So there's no opposite to that. And yet on the level of the mind, you could probably think of a few situations that would do that. So again, we are, in a sense, living this schizophrenic existence here where our orientation to the world and our conditioned mind is subject to duality, whereas we have within us the memory, the knowing, the ability to perceive on a deeper level the possibility of truth without opposite, love without opposite, life without its opposite. In other words, a complete peaceful orientation to this moment and total responsibility for all experiences. So duality is what makes a world of victims and victimizers possible. Non-duality proposes that, again, there's only one of us here. And so if I really felt that, if I really knew that person walking down the street was really fundamentally me, that we were the same being in different guises, I would have no motivation whatsoever to judge that person, to harm that person, or to take anything from that person, as I would only be harming myself. So I hope you can appreciate that the non-dual perspective is ultimately a loving perspective, and that it posits that we are all equal beings here, having individual experiences, but in reality have never really left that non-dual state. So again, there's much more that can be said about non-duality, and I do encourage you to research the topic as it's fascinating. And I find that when I even think these kind of non-dual things, I find myself automatically going into an alpha state, because when I even imagine existence without opposites, I'm automatically peaceful. And really, isn't that the goal of world religions and philosophies, etc., is to be an emissary of peace? And you can do this, but only from a non-dual perspective. So I'm going to talk about movements now. Let me see my clock here. I'm going to talk in the next segment about some basic movements with dowsing. So we'll see you then.